Are you ready?
Oh, yeah!
From parts unknown and into your home, this is the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. Now, here's your host, Groovy G.
Hello there, folks, and welcome to the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. On this episode, we talk to the man behind Main Event Belts. That's Gav Mannall. He's coming your way right now.
You're watching the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. For your official Groovy G Belt Podcast merchandise, check out www.groovyGshop.com.
Gav Mannall from Main Event Belts, welcome to the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing fine, mate. It's good to be here. How are you?
Oh, mate, every day is a good day for Groovy G. Hey,
sweet.
Let's start off. When and how did you get into title belt collecting?
So, I've been a fan since I was 5 years old. My grandfather got me into wrestling. Over here in the UK, it's mostly football, like soccer, you know. But I never watched football with my grandfather. I always watched, wrestling was always on 12 o'clock on ITV here, and I was hooked. From the moment I saw it, just hooked. And I guess that progressed onto American wrestling when I was about 8 years old. It came on television here when I was 8. The first real belt I saw was the Winged Eagle belt, which Macho Man Randy Savage held at the time. It was the dual-plated one with the Relief World banner on it. I was mesmerised by the wrestling and wrestlers, but something about the belts I just couldn't take my eyes off of. I was just in awe. So years go by, and in my late teens, and they'd take out these replicas. I think it was at Superstore, took out the replicas, and I was like, oh, okay, I have to get one of these. So ordered the Winged Eagle, of course, and they came from the States, and opened the box up, took it out, and I was like, oh, okay, that's not what it looks like on television. So a little bit disappointed, but still I thought it was quite cool, so I collected a few of them, and I went from there, mate.
Let's just go back to when you were watching the UK wrestling. Did they have title belts there at the time?
There wasn't too many, to be honest with you. I watched it every Saturday, and you hardly saw a belt on television. It was, I can remember anyway, I was very young at the time. They had belts, not like these days, or even the American wrestling belts. It was more like a trophy-style belts, that kind of style belts, like the old 70s, 60s, 70s style. Like trophy shop ones,
You were a little bit disappointed with the replica when you finally opened it up. Do you remember how much that cost you? How much did that set you back?
I think it was like $350 at the time, I think. 2 years ago now. But yeah, I opened the box up and I was like, oh man, this is really shallow and looks flat. There's no curve. The leather, there's something wrong with the leather. I was like, it's not floppy or anything, Well, did I know it wasn't real leather at the time? I was confused by that. But later on, found out, it was all simulated leather and just not good leather at all. Well, it wasn't even leather at all, So quite disappointed, but it did for a time. I sold it maybe a year later or something.
And that's the way generally people get into the hobby and start getting into collecting real belts, I guess, as well too. Starting off with replicas and then sort of see there might be some better stuff out there. Have you got a current collection at the moment?
I have one belt in my collection right now. I sold the majority of my collection maybe 18 months ago. I've got a GMR, WWF, Undisputed belt.
Nice. So I guess if you're going to have one belt in your collection, that isn't a bad one to have. How do you like to display your belts?
I'm not sure if you are familiar with the IKEA Ditolf display cabinets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've got 3 of those all empty right now, apart from the one. Well, I've got the $1 million belt replica as well. I've got 2 in my collection right now.
How do you take care of your belts? Do you have a ritual with how you clean them? How often you do it? Have you got a special cloth? Is there anything like that? Everyone's a little bit different with how they look after their belts.
So I used to clean them probably every 2 weeks, quite OCD-ish. Kind of calmed down now with that. I do have a special cloth, actually. The cloth you use to clean your spectacles you get with, the case you buy your glasses. It's that kind of cloth I use. It works a treat. Seriously, it's fantastic. It's probably the best cloth that I've had so far to clean it. But you got to watch with certain belts, especially gold-plated belts. If you use the wrong kind of cloth, you rub too hard with some of the gold plating, depending on the maker and where it's been plated from. If the gold plating's too thin, you rub too hard, you're cleaning it and you're rubbing too hard. Just be aware that some of that gold plating may rub off if you're going a bit over the top with your cleaning method. Little tip for you guys out there, chill out with your cleaning a little bit. To be honest with you, it's mostly GMR belts I've had the issue with over the years. His plating seems to be quite thin, the gold plating that is.
Now, you talked about you had some replicas in your collection before you moved on to real belts. Have you got a favourite replica belt?
Favourite replica belt, I think, was the TNA World Championship, with the eagle on it.
What was special about that one?
It was just, I love the design for one. The grommets were cool. I think it was probably the best replica that came out to date at that point. And it was great, I actually don't see many of them going around these days. Not sure how many of them was made, but yeah, that was probably my favourite one out of the whole replica. Plus the $1 million belt, that looks pretty close to the actual real thing, To get restoned especially. I think there's a guy out there, Richard Simpson, he restones him, he's pretty good at that. Little plug for him right there. When light hits it, it pops, really pops.
Oh yeah, those restone belts, you can have a look at as many videos as you want of them, but nothing really compares to seeing them in the flesh in real life, the way that the light shines off those stones. It's just quite remarkable.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially in the sunlight, if you take them outside and you're taking some photos in the sun, which is quite hard here in Scotland because, I don't know if you're aware, but the sunlight only comes out one day a year in Scotland. So, you've got to time it quite right to get the good sunshine pictures here. But yeah, if you take that $1 million belt outside, especially restoned, any belt really, you're going to get some fantastic pictures.
So, let's move on to the belt making side of things. How did you get into designing and making belts?
So, I've always wanted to be a belt maker. I asked Dan Van Alst about what program to use. He suggested Adobe Illustrator. So, I downloaded that, I bought that, and just tinkered around with certain things. I showed him after maybe 2 weeks of trying to get this belt design finished, and I showed him, he's like, yeah, it's good, but maybe change certain aspects of the belt. It just became very addictive. I like to be creative, So that's how I got into the actual design aspect. I was designing belts long before I even attempted to actually make a belt. I started to get plates etched. I used other leather crafters in the hobby to make the belts for me. I would provide the plates that would do leather. I don't want to disparage anybody in this podcast, but a couple of leather people let me down a couple of times, and I just thought, I'd like to do everything myself, so I'm relying on no one, just do it all in-house myself. So I started maybe two and a half years ago, I think now, doing leather myself, and it's grown pretty quick. I think my first belts I made, they were on New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 3 weeks later.
Wow, and that is why I really wanted to talk to you on this podcast, because your belts have been used in proper wrestling promotions. That must be like a huge buzz for you.
Dream come true, mate, really. It's such a thrill. I was, talking to Matt and Jackson, Matt and Nick, the Young Bucks. They were discussing what they'd like design-wise, and I came up with something for them. They were thrilled. I got them made, and they arrived with them like maybe 4 or 5 days before they left for Japan. So it was quite a tight schedule, but we got there, and I watched New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 11, I think it was. Yeah, 11. They came down the aisle, and I just popped big time. It was such a thrill. Absolutely.
I remember watching that myself, and I also remember thinking to myself at the same time, hey, I know the guy that has made those belts. That's a really big thing. Let's go back in time when you first came on to Belt Talk. You mentioned Dan Van Alst before, Belt Fan Dan.
Mm-hmm.
When you first joined Belt Talk, what was the hobby like when you first signed up?
For me, it was at its peak. I don't know what it was like before, I was so thrilled that there was a whole forum for like-minded people like myself who were just in love with belt. I met some amazing people on there. Some I speak to now still, some I don't speak to anymore, which is a shame. But, it's life. The hobby was at its peak, I would say. There wasn't so much bootlegs and awfully made, terrible-looking belts from Pakistan going on. It was amazing. I was really happy to be a part of that. I still am part of Belt Talk.
You mentioned that you went from being a belt fan into actually designing belts and making them. Now, for a very long time, that whole process, the acid etching, what computer programs were used to make the art files, that was a really close-guarded secret.
Absolutely.
You seem to come into the hobby and at a time when that kind of stuff was being talked about openly. And did you do a lot of research, or did you just ask a lot of questions? And you mentioned that Belt Fan Dan put you onto the programs to use for designing belts. How did you start finding out sort of those little intricacies of zinc plate etching and etching of belts and gold plating and what leather to use and what leather tools and that kind of stuff?
A lot of research. A lot. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I've put into this. It's just inconceivable how much hours I've done of research. I can't put it into words how much time it takes, mate. Honestly, it's so time-consuming. All-consuming. You've got to really have a strong passion for this. It's very guarded. I think it still is in a way, but not as much as it used to be. When I first started to get plates made, it was very guarded. Secrets of belt making, etching, etchers, yeah, all guarded, all hush-hush, very, very guarded. What was the question again, mate? Sorry, can you repeat the second half of your question?
I was just thinking, how did you go about piecing all those little pieces together? Was it a hard thing to do, or did that information come quite easily?
It was quite hard to do, like hours on the internet, just searching and searching and searching. And you find somewhere, and they wouldn't curve the belt for you, so you have to find someone else. They wouldn't do the studs. You know, I do all my own curving. I do all my own cutting. I do all my own studs in the back of the plates. I do pretty much everything apart from actually etch the belt myself and plate the belts, because I'm not sure if you're aware of this or if anybody else is aware of this, but most belt makers out there don't etch their own plates and don't plate their own plates either. They outsource this because the cost is so high to set up this sort of machines that etch the belts, and the rules and regulations as far as disposing of the acid. It actually wouldn't be worth making belts if you had an etcher machine and a massive plating machine. You need a big factory, basically. For a simple belt maker like me, it's just not possible.
Like you said, it's a collaborative effort. Even guys like Reggie Parks and Dave Milliken, they outsourced who made their plates. What's the hardest part about making a belt, putting it all together?
For me, it used to come in stages. Like, you know, I used to get frustrated painting because sometimes painting bubbles would appear in the paint after a bit of being painting, you know. But I've managed to get my painting down to where it's pretty much bang on now. You know, there's no bubbles or areas where you missed or anything like that. Sometimes you paint with a toothpick, you know, quite meticulous and painstakingly long painting with a toothpick and one drop at a time. Groovy, you know. Right now, I'd say the hardest part.
Is it the actual designing the belt to make it look good? Is it thinking what elements are going to work together? Is it trying to think about how this looks one way on a computer, but it might look differently when it's actually etched? Is it the leather? Is it waiting for platers to plate the belts? Is it to put it all together? Is it the actual physical tooling of the leather or grinding down the bolts on the back?
To be honest with you, mate, I think of everything you mentioned above, I'm in a place right now where I've got my stride, man. You know, I'm really there. You know, I've got everything down now. It's coming quite easy these days to make a belt, where it used to be quite a challenge. Okay, there's some days where you maybe make a little mistake, and that's the thing about belt making. You know, if you make one little mistake in leather, you know, that's the whole leather pretty much ruined. If you got to go back and make a new one, if it's a big scratch or if it's something like, you know, because you're working with like sharp tools here. You know, as far as designing goes, I love designing. And I love working with a customer to get the belt they want. I love designing, you know. I love showing the end of the finished product. It's so satisfying. It really is. But as far as challenges, I don't know, man. I think I'm at a place right now where I've got it down, man. Yeah.
And I guess the proof's in the pudding. There's a number of companies and individual wrestlers as well, too, that do use your belts now. When you mentioned getting the ideas that a company might have for a belt out, what's that sort of process like? A wrestling company, they approach you and they say, we want some new belts. Where do you go to from there?
First of all, for independent promotions, I think the first thing I want to know about is price. So they tell me how many plates they'd like and what it should be plated in, either copper, nickel, or gold. Obviously, gold's the most expensive, so I've got a price list where I can rattle off, you know, a 3-plate belt, gold plated or whatever, just to give them an idea. There's no point in giving price after I've, you know, designed the belt thing. So it's best to give them a price up front. This is how much it's going to cost, delivered to your door within 3 months, say. They take it from there. They Sometimes they'll describe it what they want. Sometimes they'll just say make something up, or sometimes they'll say put an eagle on it, which I personally love. The eagles on belts are just my thing, Yeah, so sometimes they'll actually draw something. Sometimes they'll actually make something on a JPEG, and they have to recreate that on a vector, if that makes sense to you. A JPEG is just basically a picture, and a vector is a program I use on Adobe Illustrator. It's graphic design. It's what you need to get the plates made and etched. So sometimes they'll just hand over a picture and say, this is what I want, and yeah, we'll go from there. I work together with them every step of the way. I give them updates, anything I change, I'm like, here you go, take a look at this. Do you like this better? Do you like this stone holder better? Do you like this shape of plate better? It's fun. It's good fun.
And you mentioned the time it takes to make a belt, the 3-month time span, but you also mentioned the price as well too. That would be something, particularly for independent promoters that aren't into collecting wrestling belts, because it is an expensive hobby. Is that something that you find that a lot of people that aren't into belt collecting find a little bit off-putting?
You mean the price?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, material. I only use the best materials, mate. I wouldn't feel comfortable using stuff from, say, overseas, like Pakistan or that, because the quality just isn't there. I don't want to send out a product that is subpar anyway. Yeah, they can be put off by the price, but material cost is high, leather cost is high, and if they want a decent belt to show on their television program, then I'm afraid they're going to have to, just pay the price. But I try and keep my costs as low as possible. I think my costs, my price of my belts are relatively amongst the cheapest as far as like the best material used, the best leather quality I use.
And that's the other thing as well too. People, once you get into belt collecting a little bit more and you look at the making side of belts, how much it costs to etch belts. You mentioned it's expensive costs because they got to get rid of the acid that etches the zinc, the gold plating, the actual leather itself, and the tooling, and just the man hours that go into assembling a belt. All of those things are expensive, and when you start to work out some of the numbers yourself, like you said, you probably wouldn't be making a massive profit on selling these belts.
Well, I've cut down my costs because I now cut out the plates myself, which is time. It takes a long time. I sand them down myself. I curve them myself. I add the studs to the back of the plates myself. Taking all that away from the etching companies can save some costs, but it also adds time to me to do that, So as far as the profit goes, there's not a huge amount of profit. There is some. You've got to have a real love of this to do it, I don't do it for free, but I'm not going to get rich off this. It's more of a love and a joy.
Okay, so you do, most of the work yourself. You do the leather, you do the painting, you do the assembly. How long does it take to get a belt together from the actual art conception through to the etching, through to it being delivered and shown on TV?
So it depends on what the customer wants as far as artwork goes. I can go through as many as like 5 or 6 different drafts. Some people are happy with the first draft. It just depends what they want and how long they take to decide, how many people are involved in the process of deciding. But usually about maybe a week to 10 days for the artwork to be confirmed. Start to finish, I would say probably around 3 months is my wait time. That includes, a third-party etching, like you said, a third-party plating, so it's a different company that plates and etches, so it's got to be shipped here, shipped there, then shipped to me. There's a lot of, first of all, it's etched, shipped to me. I cut it out, curve it, stud it, sand it down, then I ship it to the plater. They plate it, ship it back, then I paint the plates and make leather. So, all in all, about I'd say 4 months tops.
What are the latest belts that you've made that people might be able to see? Something that's hot off the press.
Actually just finished 3 belts for Revolution Pro Wrestling here in the UK. I'd say probably the biggest well-known company in the UK. So I made their cruiserweight belt and their tag belts. By the time this podcast comes out, I'm sure everyone would have seen them. I think it turned out fantastic. Probably the belt I'm most happy with, design-wise and leather-wise as well. Everyone should check out the backs in as well because they've got red and blue backing on them, which is something JMR used to do with his belts, different coloured belts and different coloured backings. And I want to get more into that side of things, different coloured, not just black all the time. I want to get more into the coloured straps and different cool coloured backings. I think that's cool, you know. I used to like when the Warrior used to have the blue winged eagle, and Shawn Michaels had the white one, I think it was, and yeah, it was pretty cool. And the European one, which I'm a big fan of, the green strap with the, I think it was a red cross backing, or burgundy. I'm really a fan of those belts, and I want to get more into those sort of things. But yeah, that's the 3 belts I've made probably last week or so. Yeah.
Now, the Cruiserweight Championship, you mentioned the different leather colour on the back. Now, that's something, to me, it gives it a real retro feel. With the tag belts, the bottom of them, there's actually 2 wrestlers, but that's telling a bit of a story, isn't it?
Yeah, it actually is. If you look at the bottom of the tag belts, you'll see 4 wrestlers in the circle. One is doing a German suplex on the other one, and the other 2, one is punching the other one in the face. So basically what you got there is a finish. German suplex pin, and then the guy who's getting pinned, his partner comes in, and then the person who's performing the German suplex, his partner comes in and strikes his opponent so he doesn't break up the pin. That was the idea behind it. That's the story behind that. I thought it was pretty cool, a little neat thing at the bottom. I hope people who don't hear this podcast seem to understand the meaning behind it.
And that's a cool little intricacy, I suppose, that only real belt fans will get. Are you looking to do that kind of stuff into the future with other belts?
I love seeing grapplers on belts. I'm not a fan of the current WWE titles, you know, with a big W on them. It's just not, it's not my sort of belt design I would like to own or make. I'm an old school belt fan. I like seeing grapplers on belts like a winged eagle, etc. I like little intricacies like that, little stories. I think I would do that in the future with more belts. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned the current WWE belts, and we can see where they come from. They're a big mass corporation. They want to put their branding out there. Wrestling companies will want to put their logos on a belt, and you've said that you like to put on different elements like grapplers or eagles onto a belt as well too. Is there a place for the promotion's logo on a belt, and how big should that be?
Absolutely. The logo needs to be on there. I mean, that's a must. Sometimes belts get posted online, and if your logo isn't on there, that's not going to draw anybody to your promotion, you know? If someone sees the belt and it's a cool looking belt, if it's well made on good leather, nicely etched, it looks pristine, and that's a good thing for the company. If your logo isn't on it, that sucks for everybody. If you look at the Rev Pro belts I've made, the logo's on the main plates and on the side plates as well, actually. You'll see on the main plates it's not overly big, it's big enough, it's in the centre, and it's no mistaking who it's for. You know, but as far as the gaudy looking belts that WWE have designed, the big W, not a fan. But each to their own, I guess. A lot of people are a fan of that. If they all like the same thing, they will be pretty boring, I think.
Right out, name drop time. Who are some of the most famous people that you've worked with or made belts for? You mentioned the Young Bucks belt before. Who are some of the most famous ones that you've worked with?
I've made belts for DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, yeah. Jake the Snake. I've made belts for Harley Race, Colt Cabana, the Villain, Marty Skrull, the late great Big Van Vader.
Well, you forgot to mention the Young Bucks one as well too. They actually use that on
TV.
Yes,
absolutely. Yes, the Young Bucks, absolutely, yeah.
And the Hardy Boys had them in their possession at one stage as well too.
That was pretty cool, yeah. That was, it's actually a great photo I use on my website. It's pretty cool to see that, yeah. When it came back at the Mania, it was just a huge pop. I'm a big fan of the Hardys too. Young Bucks are awesome as well. Oh, I've also made a belt for the King, Jerry Lawler. That belt was him and Andy Kaufman as a tribute belt to their feud, the Memphis territory. And I know the King just loves that belt. It's in his house. He's got it on display.
And that's the thing, when you make these tribute belts, you actually get the permission from the wrestlers themselves, don't you? What's their reaction to getting a call from someone from Scotland wanting to make a tribute belt about them?
Well, getting over the language barrier, even though we speak the same language, once that's done, we have a conversation about the belt and talk about, obviously I give them a percentage, a commission of each belt I sell. So, yeah, once they finish product and they have it in hand, I remember handing over, showing DDP his belt at WrestleCon, and he was just pretty much marked out for the belt. You know, I mean, I don't think it's a derogatory term. I'm a mark myself, absolutely. I love wrestling. I love wrestling belts. That makes me a mark. So be it. He held up the belt in front of like hundreds of people. Gave me a shout out as well. It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was awesome. Vader called me several times, thanking me so much for the belt that I made, and he was just so impressed. Him and his son Jesse, good people. It's a shame what happened to him, but yeah, he was a really nice guy.
And those belts, they're available to the public, aren't they?
They sure are, yes. MainEventBelts.com. That's the website you can get it from.
Right now, what belt are you most proud of and why?
So, I think there's two I'm probably most proud of. So here in Scotland, in Aberdeen, where I'm from, we have a local promotion called the Wrestle Zone. I donated a belt to them to auction off for charity, for a local cancer charity here in Aberdeen. And it managed to raise £700, which I was just, so amazed by. That equates to about, I think, 1,200 American dollars. So, yeah, that went to charity, and I was really, really, really happy with that. The other one is a belt for the same company, Wrestler Zone. One of its staff members had breast cancer, and she managed to beat the cancer, which is fantastic. The guys there wanted to surprise her. She was refereeing a match after her recovery, and they presented her with a belt I made, Stronger Than Cancer. It was for Kirsten. She's a really nice woman, and she loved it. She loved the belt. I'm very, very proud of those two belts,
Well, since you brought it up, because there's not many, well, if any, belt makers that I know of that have made free belts before, and you did a couple of ones for the charities. What is it about supporting your local community and cancer research? Why is that important for you?
Well, I've had family members affected by cancer, and I want to give back. I donate to charity every month. Cancer research. It comes off my bank every month, same date, direct debit. So something I believe in. Supporting the wrestling community, local wrestling community, and local people. Absolutely got to do that. I think it's good for them. It makes you feel good yourself. It's just all good, positive things. Too much negativity in this world, mate. Too much negativity online, on social media. It's got to be positive. It's got to be positive, man.
Now, when you are making a belt for whether it's a wrestler or a local federation, have you had any really strange requests for what somebody wants on a belt?
I actually had one yesterday. I hope he's not listening to this, but he might be. And I think it's a good idea for him personally, but I've never heard a request like this before. I think he wants to order it. I'm not sure if he will after this, but I'll start it out. I better finish the answer. A flan belt.
A flan belt?
Flan, as in like a cake sort of thing. He makes like these flans or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Jay-Z's got his biscuit and chicken belt, so...
Well, this one won't spin.
Well, I guess it wouldn't be the first time a baked good has appeared on a belt, but I guess
true.
That's something different.
Wasn't there a McDonald's belt before as well, or something?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go on to some other belt designs, ones that you haven't made yourself. Is there a belt design that's grown on you over the years?
The WCW tag belt, the one Reggie Parks made from the late 80s, early 90s. When I saw that belt online and, pictures and on TV, I was like, I'm not digging that at all. And then I bought one. I luckily got it pretty cheap, so I bought it. I wasn't a big fan of it, and I got it in person. I was like, wow, I can't believe I didn't like this belt. The design is so simple and cool, and the filler on it is just amazing. I think because you can't make it the filler on TV, I think that just put me off. It looked all messy, and I guess it is kind of a messy sort of filler, but it works. It really works. So that one's grown on me.
And you mentioned that how it didn't work on TV. I think one that springs to mind is that new AEW belt. That looks like it's got a lot of intricacy going on, but I don't know how much that will show up on TV, on cameras. Do you have to think about that kind of stuff when you're designing belts? Because it might look good on the computer, but then how's it going to look on TV?
Absolutely. If you're designing, you can't think the camera's going to be like 12 inches away from the belt, because that's never the case anymore. For some reason, I remember in the 90s, used to take good shots, so the camera used to get good and close to the belts, on television, during the matches, they used to, take a closest shot to the belts. Even in New Japan right now, actually, they still do that with the belts, which is good. But yeah, for designing, you got to make sure you're not designing something too small where it's going to get lost. As far as the AEW belt goes, initially when I saw it, I didn't like it that much because I couldn't really make it out. The pictures weren't that good. But I think Dave posted some pictures on his Facebook the other day, and I got some good pictures, and I took a look at it again. It's growing on me. It's growing on me. I love stacked plates as well. Stacked plates are good. It's just unfortunate that, most companies don't want to spend the money to... It's extra plates means extra material, means extra plating, which adds up to cost. Well, for stacked belts, unfortunately, there's not many of them going around these days.
Now, is there a design out there that everybody loves, but you secretly hate?
Oof. I tell you what, I'm not a big fan of the current ROH belts, to be honest with you. I'm not sure how many people love them, but just not to my taste. I mean, they're very well made. As far as design goes, I'm not a fan, really. I used to hate the big gold, the crumb round big gold, but I think that's because I was such a big WWF fan. Anything WCW was like, Then I joined Belt Talk, and I saw more pictures, and everyone was loving big golds. I was like, still not sold. Then a big gold book came out, and I bought the big gold book, and I was thinking, okay, yeah, I love it now. It's a great belt. I'm not sure why I hate it. Well, I'm not sure why I hate it so much. I think it's probably because I was such a big WWF fan back in the day.
Now, the conversation, when we're talking about belts, it always goes around to bootlegs. So, let's talk about bootlegs. Have you ever owned any? What are your opinions on bootlegs?
Full disclosure, yes, I have owned them. I'm not going to lie, because I don't believe in bullshitting. When I first got involved in a hobby, yes, I owned a few bootlegs. Have I changed my stance on that now? 100%. The quality, it depends where you get them, I guess. Some are good, some are bad. What I figured out many years ago now is the artwork is never ever going to be correct. And I was never ever happy with, never 100% happy with a bootleg. So I stopped collecting them because it's wrong. It's wrong. I've been bootlegged myself, and the feeling you get from that is, it's pretty shitty. And I'm pretty sure some people out there couldn't give a damn about that. But it's not nice. You put your heart and your soul into this design, and you see it bootlegged 3 weeks later for sale for less than half of what you paid to get it made, or the price of the plates here. It's just wrong, mate.
So what was your motivation when you first got bootlegs then? Was it the price? Was it the time? Was it that you just wanted something that you'd seen before? Was it just the convenience?
I think it was the price, and I had a couple of people in my ear, which I was listening to, and probably I shouldn't have been listening to. As you get older, you mature, and your perspective changes,
You're probably in a unique position where you actually make belts, and like you said, you've had your designs bootleg, so you've been able to feel the other side of that. I guess the other thing with bootlegs, what I always would advocate, is that they're not worth anything. They're not worth what you paid for them, because you mentioned the art is never 100%, so it's not like it's been made by the actual original belt maker. It's made by somebody else, so then it's not worth anything. Is it hard to resell them?
As far as I don't know anything about that these days, because I haven't been doing it for years now. I quit the bootlegging thing years before I started making belts. As far as holding the price, I know that back then they didn't hold price. I'm not sure what it's like now. I don't think they're worth very much, no. But especially the ones you see on I checked out eBay the other day to see what was on eBay, and my God, have you looked at eBay recently, Groovy?
Oh yeah, mate. You can't find anything that's not a bootleg on there anymore.
Exactly. I was looking for a couple of replicas to maybe buy and re-leather and sell, but I was like, well, where are they? There's no replicas left. It's all boots. Like, oh my God, awful.
Now, let's get on to some of the people in the hobby now. Who would be some of the best guys in the hobby that you've met?
Eric Rottencrouch. I'd don't know how to say your last name, mate. I'm sorry. Eric, you know who you are. Mark Nielsen, Johan. I met Johan, had a few beers with him. Dave, who also I met. Jeff Jewett. I met some of these guys. They're cool guys. Yourself, you know. I'm sure there's something missing.
Now, you talked about meeting these people. You met them face-to-face or talking to them over the phone?
I met them a couple of years ago at WrestleMania when I went over. DDP and Jake invited me over to WrestleCon to be a part of, you know, I was showing the belts, the DDP belt, the Jake the Snake belt, and Vader was also there as well. So they invited me over to be a part of that. And I met Mark Nielsen, I met Dave and Eric and Jeff. Yeah, met those guys. Hung up with them at Mania. Yeah, and Raw. Did we go to Raw? SmackDown and NXT Takeover. Yeah, it was awesome.
Now, a lot of the collecting hobby is done all online. Is there a different dynamic when you meet someone that you've been talking to or been reading their posts online? Is it different when you meet them in person?
Well, I've never had a problem with any of those guys I mentioned above, before, so not really. No, they've all been great guys to meet.
Do you just talk about belts, or are there other things that you find out that you have in common?
Oh, no, we talk about just general stuff in life, or, you know, maybe our kids or belts. Sure, there's a lot of conversation about belts and wrestling, but we talk about normal stuff, you know?
Now, we talked about the good guys in the hobby. What about some of the biggest jerks in the hobby? Are you going to name names?
I don't want to name names, mate, no. There's some, you know, I won't say any names, but people who just go out of their way. I remember when I first started making the belts, I had a tier system. Tier system 1, 2, and 3. It was like tier 3 was the lowest and tier 1 was the highest, if I can remember correctly. The lowest tier, it may be like a 2mm belt on like plain leather. It was selling for like $300. That's not much. For a real belt, that's cheaper than some replica belts. And some people went out of their way to bootleg me with a super kick belt. That's quite annoying when I'm offering that at such a low price, but what can you do, mate? There's always going to be people out there that are like that. It's best not to let it bother you too much. It's best just to move on. It's best just to put that at the back of your mind and just get on with things. And
is that bootlegging, is that what you hate most about this hobby, or what is it that you hate most about this hobby?
That, bootlegging and probably jealousy. Jealousy between collectors. And I know what that's about, because when I first got into this, I was jealous of everyone's collection because everybody had loads of belts I wanted and I didn't have any, you know, so I know where they're coming from a little bit, but when close friends get jealous of your collection, it's a bit petty, you know, or former friends in the hobby. But yeah, I'd say bootlegging probably number one, especially if stuff people praise that's just obviously terrible. I wish they'd do more research, and Belt Talk's a great place to do that. Even looking at people's websites, like the main belt makers, you can see what quality is compared to, let's say the eBay belts. I mean, it's night and day.
Talking about praise, are you talking about the way that people will praise other makers' work?
Yeah, simply because of the price. And they convince themselves that it's so good, but I don't think they're comparing it to something that is good, or they don't know this. Maybe it's just ignorance. I don't mean that in a bad way, but just they don't know. Maybe they don't know what's good and what's bad. I don't know. As I say, Belt Talk's a great place to learn and ask. You're not going to get flamed like it was back in 2010. These days, everyone's pretty cool, I think, you know. If you're polite, you know, you'll get a polite answer, I think.
And that's the thing. Things, I think, with belt collecting now are a lot more open in that regards, where you can ask a lot more questions.
Mm-hmm.
There must be some good things about the hobby. What are the best things about the hobby?
Honestly, I think it's making friends, really. I mean, connecting with people over something that you love. I mean, here, where I'm from, I know, like, maybe one person who's into wrestling and belts. He's not really into belts, he's into wrestling, but, you know, the best thing about the community is we all love belts. We all have the same desire to own them. And it's good because you don't get that. Your next neighbour isn't going to be a belt collector, you know what I mean, or be a massive belt fan. So I think that's the best thing, making friends.
Okay, if money was no object, what would be the one belt that you could happily own and not have anything else?
Do you mean ring used or what?
Money's no object. Anything that you could lay your hands on. Ring news, the real deal, whatever it could be. If there was just one belt that you could own and not have anything else, what would it be?
Probably Randy Savage's ring used WrestleMania 4 dual plated winged eagle with the relief, world banner, and shell tip.
Now, you answered that pretty quickly. That's a obvious choice by a lot of people. What is it about that winged eagle that stands out to you?
Everything, mate. It's my childhood wrapped into that. It's beautiful. There's no beating that belt. I don't care what it is. It's just, that's my belt, and nothing's ever going to beat that for me. It's fantastic. It's in belts were so, they weren't just like chopped and changed every 6 months like holders. I mean, people held on to that belt for a while. Wasn't many really over the years who held it. And
they're certainly the who's who of professional wrestling, the people that did end up holding the winged eagle. Now, absolutely. This might be a bit of a loaded question. Reggie Parks, Dave Milliken, J-Mar, Wildcat, or other favourite designer? Reggie, hands down. I thought you were going to say main event belts. What is it about Reggie? How about a close second then? How about that? What is it about Reggie Parks' belts that do it for you? He's an innovator. He is the king of belts. Like his nickname suggests, he is the king of belts. He designed all the belts that I, from my childhood, was in love with. And even when, I got older and discovered other federations, looked back at their belts and loved their belts as well. I mean, I don't think I dislike any belt that he's made, like any design that he's my go-to for best designs, and like he was making belts at WWE and WWF, and that's pretty awesome. Oh yeah, don't you think, Groovy? I mean, how about you? Who's your go-to? Oh yeah, he's the man. Like he made them for everyone. If you watched any professional wrestling in the 80s or 90s, or even the UFC, he made them for them. Absolutely. He's a man. I wish he was still making belts, but people deserve a retirement. And how old is he? 82, 83 now. I think he'd be getting up there. Now, how do people get in contact with you if they want a belt made? You talked about those tribute belts, the DDP belt, the Jake the Snake Roberts belt, the Vader belt, the Young Bucks belt. How do people get in contact with main event belts? You can go to my website, maineventbelts.com. You can send an email. It's maineventbelts@gmail.com. You can shoot me a message on Twitter at maineventbelts. Those are pretty much the three main ways. I'm also on Facebook as well. If you search Main Event Belts, I'm available there as well. So those are the main ways you can get in contact with me. I'm also on Belt Talk as well if you want to contact me that way. Ross C. Tiger is my handle. Gav Mannall, thank you very much for joining me on the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast. Mate, it was a pleasure to be here. Hope to be on soon again. Thank you very much, mate.
On the next episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast.
On the next episode of the Groovy G Championship Belt Podcast, we take a close-up look at a Reggie Parks-made classic WWF Intercontinental title belt. In the meantime, make sure you don't miss a thing by subscribing to this YouTube channel, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter at Groovy G Belt Show or on Facebook. In the meantime, take care. It's bye for now.